Everything is proceeding as I have foreseen.
A US senator has introduced a bill that would ban loot boxes and pay-to-win microtransactions. Now, I'm not going to say I told you so. Who said I was going to say I told you so? I would never, ever claim to have told the game industry so. But I did tell them so. I did. I said exactly what would happen. I said if the video game industry kept indulging in excessive monetization, predatory, exploitative monetization, if they kept putting gambling mechanics in their video games, politicians would start getting very, very interested in this unregulated revenue stream that's making the industry billions. Now, this is not to say any bill introduced would succeed. This is America after all, where the law tends to favour the corporate rather than the personal. But this is a very genuine, very serious effort to regulate the video game industry, which is exactly what I said politicians would start being very interested in doing. And to all the people who told me I was making a mountain out of a molehill, that I was overblowing the situation and it didn't really matter, here we are. To turn a phrase that's quite fitting regarding this subject, if I were a gambling man, I would not put money on this bill succeeding. Mostly because, as I say, this is America, and one doesn't expect America to look out for people versus a corporation. But this is still notable because this demonstrates a very clear legislative interest in the video game industry's monetization within the US. Now, we already know that in countries like Belgium, loot boxes have already been investigated and deemed gambling. I'm not so certain that the country plagued by robocalls with no one doing anything a fucking about it will do anything about loot boxes. They might, but as I say, I ain't putting money on it. Up until now, big publishers like EA and Activision have been putting money on nothing being done about it because of, well, how much they've invested in all of this gambling bollocks. Anyway, Senator Josh Hawley introduced this bill which is called the Protecting Children from Abusive Games Act, which, hell of a title. In press surrounding the bill, Candy Crush was brought up as a specific example of a pay-to-win game with its $150 luscious bundle. The bill has in its sights any game designed for children or any game in which the developers know full well that kids are playing it. Basically, any game in which kids can engage with microtransactions could very well fall under the purview of this bill. In a press release, Hawley said, "When a game is designed for kids, game developers shouldn't be allowed to monetize addiction, and when kids play games designed for adults, they should be walled off from compulsive microtransactions. Game developers who knowingly exploit children should face legal consequences." I mean, I can't really argue with that, because as I've said before, if a game wants gambling mechanics, if it wants to use premium paid-for monetized gambling mechanics, very well, go right ahead, fill your boots, but be aware that if you have gambling in your game, it should probably be covered by some gambling regulations. So many of these microtransactions are psychologically manipulative. I've been saying that, I've been banging that drum for like 6 years, if not more. From the smallest cosmetic microtransaction to the most egregious loot box, they're all designed to play on your mind in some way, and for certain players, and certainly impulsive kids, there is a predatory element to that. I've been working on a video that talks about the very real human cost of some of these predatory exploitative games, because I still think it's a very important topic. It's something worth discussing. And it's not just about the kids. For me, I've never been one of the save the children types of guys. Anyone with problem gambling issues could be affected by this. Anyone with addictive personalities could be affected by this, child and adult alike. But certainly games aimed at kids, games marketed towards kids, games in which the developers know, as I say, full well that kids are playing it and that it's appealing to kids, there should be some fucking responsibility, there should be some fucking accountability for whatever microtransactions have been smuggled into the fucking game. And I know some people will respond with, well, you're calling for the regulation of artistic expression. I've seen that many times. I have an entire Jimquisition designed to counter that argument. Because, you know, developers like David Jaffe have brought it up before that the idea of regulating something like a loot box would have the knock-on effect of censoring art, but loot boxes and microtransactions are not artistic expression. Now, the actual design of a chest that contains a loot, there can be artistic expression in that, but the concept of the loot box, the concept of microtransactions, they are, well, transactions. It's a business model, it's a financial transaction, and they're regulated with very good reason all the pissing time. And for too long, the AAA video game industry has enjoyed a free ride on so much stuff, getting out of paying royalties, getting out of having to have unionized workers, getting to duck so much responsibility and so much accountability, using the fact that technology is faster than the law to get away with, for years, gambling mechanics in their games without technically being labelled gambling. And that is starting to change in some countries, and certainly within attitudes in many other places. Now, you won't see me celebrating the result of this bill either way. I may throw some more I told you so's at the industry if something ever got passed, but I would never celebrate it simply because it wounds me to see the game industry taking advantage of its audience so much that it got this far. That a company like EA was so fucking reckless, it basically started the ball rolling on this shit with Star Wars Battlefront 2, that the game industry was so confident in its extreme strip mining of the artistic integrity of its games to the point where games have markedly gotten worse so that the microtransactions are more valuable, or at least they have the illusion of more value. I mean, I'm letting my words get away from me here because I get so fucking angry when I get on a roll with this fucking subject. But the point is, it should never have gotten this far. This is a road that should never have been walked down. But the industry just couldn't fucking help itself. It just had to keep indulging, keep indulging, keep indulging. To the point where it fucked itself over as an industry, because we've talked many times about the problems of unsustainable growth on this channel, especially this year, as basically the pipe has come to collect. Because these companies exploded with the ridiculous amounts of revenue that recurrent user spending was getting them, that now they're expected to make even more, and they can't because they keep hitting ceilings, because they keep getting so extreme, and there's nowhere left for them to go. So we have Activision boasting of record bloody revenue while laying off 800 employees at the same time. I lay so many industrial, business, and artistic problems with the AAA game industry at the feet of microtransactions being shoveled in to premium games. When they started doing that last generation, they started a snowball that's led us here. Microtransactions have been a fucking blight on the mainstream game industry, and I simply don't care how they're gotten rid of. And I've got absolutely no fucking sympathy, no sympathy at all for any video game publisher that is looking at this political interest in microtransactions and is feeling nervous. I've got no sympathy for those fucking parasites whatsoever, mate. I warned them. At the end of the day, I warned them. Oh, and as I was rendering the bulk of the video, Kotaku updated with a response from the Entertainment Software Association, that band of pricks. They said, numerous countries, including Ireland, Germany, Sweden, Denmark, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom, determine that loot boxes do not constitute gambling. Brah. Well, first of all, Australia and the United Kingdom have performed studies that show definite links between loot boxes and problem gambling. They didn't point that out, did they? We look forward to sharing with the Senator the tools and information the industry already provides that keeps the control of in-game spending in parents' hands. Parents already have the ability to limit or prohibit in-game purchases with easy-to-use parental controls. That bullshit, that mealy-mouthed shite, is part of the reason, by the way, why I don't harp on the kids so much. Anyway, weak, pathetic little statement that came out just as I was finishing up the video, so I thought I'd throw it in. It doesn't really say anything. It's them basically appealing for the status quo, appealing for things to not change. Fuck them. Fuck the ESA.